I get mortified after breakups because I'm like, A, cannot believe you've seen me naked. B, I'm like, that is so embarrassing that I was wrong. Like, I told people I was going to marry you. I told people da. Like, I feel wrong and I get really embarrassed about it.
Love is the most powerful thing you can give and receive in this world. And it's like, that's never something to be ashamed of or regret doing.
Somebody else asked for surviving a breakup after the death of their father. At Meadow.
You and me, baby. You and me.
The first 2 weeks of your breakup, you're like, you know what I want to go do is get drunk with my girlfriends. Like,
I did that for more than 2 weeks.
You don't want them to like finish going down on you. And then you're like, so by the way.
Shout out if you've been here long enough to know that we've used Poignant wrong for a year and a half and then had it integrate as part of our shadow. Aaron turns and whispers in my ear, ever since you walked through those doors, it feels like I can breathe again. And we went home and talked about our dead parents all night long.
I love how I look shocked that I've heard this story 75 times. Like, you're not going to win the cool award because you like,
right, because you took longer to respond.
Like, who cares? You're in fucking 5th grade. Like, text him back.
Nice to see you again, Gabriella.
Nice to see you again. It's been
a pleasure.
Many years. And so long. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome back to Thoughts May Vary.
One of our favorite things to do.
What are we doing?
Q&As.
That is our favorite thing to do.
It really is. I mean, just the back and forth is everything.
You know what's fun about the questions,
we say it
too?
every Q&A.
Is that you guys, obviously we recognize people's, I was about to say like screen names as if we're like on AIM.
It is a screen handle. Screen
Yeah. We recognize your handles and your names. And so it's fun to see when you could tell like the progression of a question.
Or
Like
how
ooh.
people grow through their questions. In the
Yeah.
same way you watch us grow, we kind of do sneakily through your questions.
Yeah.
Take it
Not
away.
to expose.
Are you reading
Okay.
for us today?
Yeah, I'm reading. So
Okay.
sorry, I don't have note cards. A part of our rebrand is I want us to have really nice little note cards.
You are so journalism right now.
I just don't want to be that asshole that's like always on their phone.
No, totally. I get it.
And so
I
I
get it.
want that.
And I feel like being more analog will like foster the space of connection.
You know.
more. Yeah.
Okay.
Leave it
But
to
anyway,
me.
until then. Okay. Question number 1. How to bring up okay sex. I've been in my head about it because real feelings, but sex needs improvement.
Let's start at baseline with the fact that sex progresses and sex is getting to know someone's body, and that can take time, and that's normal.
Yeah.
Like, not every one night stand, not every first relationship and partner that you're going to have is going to speak the language of your body. And that's like an active, normal thing to communicate and work on.
Yeah.
Let's just like centralize that. I mean, to toot our own horns, Sex with Emily and Dr. Tara Love Bites were 2 amazing sex experts we've had on the podcast that speak a lot to communication. Because to me, the way this question comes down to is not you don't have a spark. It's how do you need to communicate what feels good to you, what you want them to do to you,
Yeah.
how to make that fun, how to make that safe, how to like, so this sounds like to me a need for more communication.
Well, yeah. And I think particularly Sex with Emily's episode, she gives really good tangible tips when it comes to this. Like she talks
Totally.
about the compliment sandwich.
Yeah.
So like keeping what Meadow just said centralized in the fact that like it takes time to get to know each other's bodies. Also like, are you being vocal about what you want, or is your partner just playing a guessing game in the situation?
Right.
You can approach it with a compliment sandwich, which outside of the bedroom, you don't want them to like finish going down on you. And then you're like, so by the way,
I will say
you
inside
can
of the
give
bedroom though,
during-
give tips
you can give tips
during,
and
but
direction.
not of like what you don't like, give what you do. Like if they
Yes.
start doing something you like, be like, oh, I like that.
or be like, you
Versus-
can try this.
Totally. Or like when
Yes.
you do that, it feels so good.
Yes.
Whatever it may be.
But outside of the bedroom is when you have the like,
Compliment
hey,
sandwich. Hey, this doesn't feel as good. Or I like when you do this more.
I love this.
Yeah.
You hit them with the compliment. I
Yep.
love this. I love when you do this. I love when you make me feel this way. I also XYZ.
And also,
And also
it's
XYZ,
not
whatever
my
the fuck.
favorite, or it doesn't feel as good.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
I think, and then like, I think it would feel better
Yeah.
if you did this. And I love blah, 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 blah.
And what's also really cool is after presenting that, saying, what can I do that feels really good? Is there anything I
Yeah.
can try? Is there anything you want to try that you haven't told me about? Like open the space for conversation and also for them to say something to you. Feels like a two-way street.
Because also like guessing
Yeah.
when you're having sex and you do something that they really don't like that maybe is like a boundary for them or whatever. Like
Or wrapped in
that's-
trauma.
That's weird.
different positions
Yeah.
that come with trauma
Like
or whatever.
it feels
Yeah,
weird in the moment because then it's
totally.
like changes the mood.
Totally.
And you're like,
totally.
"Oop."
And then there's an energetic shift that someone else isn't privy to. And then that can be like end up having like a weird energy without it being explained. Yeah, communication is key when it comes to sex.
Yeah.
Key.
I'm trying to think about like personal anecdotes that aren't revealing on somebody else's behalf, but
I
tough.
feel like we kind of gave some good advice. Those 2 episodes are truly jam-packed with a lot of tools and tips for this.
I know. I just want to make sure I'm not being like, hey guys, go listen to another episode and then come back.
Fair.
Because also they're pointing out that their intimacy is there.
It's
Or like
the
their
connection. It's the physical
emotional connection.
act.
It's the physical act. So maybe like, are you guys comfortable physically and like intimately in other ways that aren't just sex? Like I'm curious, like
make out and don't
how's
have
your
sex.
cuddling? How's your making
Yeah,
out? Like
yeah, totally.
can you look at each other
Mhm.
in the eye and it
Mhm.
not be weird? Like maybe
Do some weird tantra shit. Get
not-
into it. Have fun.
But like, or just fucking cuddle and hold hands and get
Right.
comfortable in an intimate setting that's not like, let's fuck.
Yeah.
Moving on.
I think you can make it a game. Buy the We're Not Really Strangers sex game. Like get comfortable
Yeah.
talking about sex outside of giving feedback
Yeah.
so that giving feedback doesn't feel as pointed or pointed. Do we use poignant wrong?
I don't know. We use it
Shout out
wrong
if
all
you've
the
been here
time.
long enough to know that we've used poignant wrong for a year and a half and then had it integrate as part of our shadow.
My favorite thing is when we use words with our whole chest and
It's
they're
all I do. And it's just wildly inaccurate.
yeah. Okay. Moving on.
Okay.
How do you manifest something that doesn't need actual actions? This made
What
me
does that even mean?
haha.
I need so much more context to answer that question.
I'm trying to think of things that you don't actually need to take aligned action for, which I feel like is everything. I
Like
think there's
even
just
if it's a
tiers.
conceptual, even if it's like a not a personality trait, but if it's something you want to develop versus something you want to obtain as a thing, like no matter what it is, I see there needing to be action. So I need more information to answer. I need more information to answer this question.
I just think that like, and I'm not just specifying the person who said this because like I don't mean to put this on you, but I do think that there's like a lot of people who are like, if I dream it hard enough, like it's gonna happen. And like I think that obviously takes you to a certain level, but like you need to take aligned act. Like it needs to exist.
Yeah.
Without sounding like the fucking buzzword queen of the world over here. Like it needs to happen.
Please
So
write
I'm clear.
again and give us a little more context. And you can tell us what we can and cannot share.
Yeah.
But with a little more context, I'd love to provide more helpful answers.
Yeah. I would love to know what you're trying to manifest because I could also be fully talking out of my ass, which is very possible. Okay, here. We're combining 2 questions. So somebody asked for breakup advice in general, and then somebody else asked for surviving a breakup after the death of their father. At Meadow.
You and me, baby. You and me. I went through a breakup a year after my dad died. No, yeah.
What was the
Something
difference?
like that.
Like, how did you feel like that?
Well, first
breakup-
of all, it was my first breakup.
Okay.
First love of my life, first breakup, dated for 4 or 5 years and broke up. Yeah, a year after my dad died.
Okay.
I think in general, both things are grief. Because, we've talked about grief doesn't just have to be death. You can grieve old versions of yourself. You can grieve old beliefs you've had. You can grieve old relationships. So this is a lot of grief.
Mm-hmm.
So grief in general, what I've found from it is that the only way out is through.
Yeah.
You're going to have to feel every nook and cranny of that feeling. I think when you're in the moment, you don't want any reframes. You don't want any placations. You don't want any hindsight. You need to fully feel every fucking ounce of that grief and let yourself experience it and get through it and whatever makes sense to you. And I think on the other side of it, or as you're crawling out of that, a really beautiful way to look at it is to, in honor of grief is a symbol of the love you've had and to never regret that. So with death, it's like what Anne Louise used to say, of in order to trust what I had with you and my love for you, I have to be okay with how it ended.
Yeah.
And with a breakup, it's that love is the most powerful thing you can give and receive in this world. And it's that's never something to be ashamed of or regret doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when you can harness that power and be like, it hurts so much to it ends, but we're all of us are always willing to bet it all in order to get it. That is the most powerful and beautiful shit ever. And you should never feel some type of way for allowing yourself to try to believe that or try to give into that, even if it doesn't work out. So I think really holding space for grief and whatever it means to you, getting through it, and don't tell yourself that the like spiritual placations until you really do just let yourself experience the thing and then move to the hindsight. And then in general, breakup tips that I have.
Yeah.
I felt like I was always my best self during breakups because I would really find myself again.
Mm.
So I really love encouraging people. One of my favorite tips, one, replace texting them every day with texting a best friend if you can. Like, you know, if
Yeah.
you are
For like the
used to-
immediate future.
or like, yes, right.
Yeah.
Like if you used to send memes to them all the time, or if you used to do a
Yeah.
check-in every day driving home from work, like call your mom instead, call your best friend instead, like find a different person. Like that's kind of nice to lean into the
'Cause
community.
those are the things
with the
that
patterns.
fuck with you the most after a breakup, or like the mundane
Empty patterns.
things
Yes.
that like you would do with that person.
100%.
Like I remember when I went through my high school breakup, I was like, who am I gonna go to CVS with? Like that
Exactly.
genuinely was a thought that went through my brain.
Exactly. So like fun little things like that,
Yeah.
like kind of diversifying your community and leaning into them to do those things is really fun. And then what was going to be my other? In terms of finding yourself again, like get into the shit that you're really into that you haven't explored yet. Like, have you always wanted to take a ceramics class? Do you want to try a
Yeah.
new style? Do you want to do that? Like really go back to yourself and get into shit and explore different things that have kind of like piqued your interest in different ways that you haven't yet explored.
Yes, I agree. I think it's so funny whenever we see people that are like going through this like makeover when they go through a breakup, we often will like shit on them in a way where we're like, oh, you're going through it. Like what's happening? But I really
love
do
that
think that
time,
it's like
though.
a shedding. And it's
It
like,
is, yeah.
it's a permission that we give ourselves to explore whatever growth might have been stunted during that time, or whatever pieces of ourselves might have morphed into the other person, whatever we would have adopted from them that like doesn't really feel like us anymore. And that, you're right, like as much as breakups suck
No,
for the most part, like they hurt so badly, they're fun because you get to
at a certain point.
reintroduce at a certain point.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you get to reintroduce yourself to yourself.
Yeah.
Also, I will say, like, I completely agree with you and retweet on all of the like, you can't go around it, you got to go through it. I also love a nuanced situation and like pay attention. Like, it's fine if for the first 48 hours, for the first 2 weeks of your breakup, you're like, you know what I want to go do is get drunk with my girlfriends. Like, I think
did that for more than 2 weeks.
I know, but
Yeah.
I'm saying like, I feel like we hear a lot of this like, just you got to cry it out. And you gotta do like, no, bitch, it's fucking fine. You want to go to the
Maladaptive
club.
coping. Like sometimes that serves you. Sometimes Netflix
cares?
binging is real coping. Sometimes going to the club and shaking your ass and getting really shit faced is real coping. Like abso-fucking-lutely.
Like, do the thing that like it's fine. Don't let someone be like, you're distracting, you're distracting, you're distracting.
Healthy distraction is so necessary in grief. Thank you for saying that.
Like if
It
you,
is so necessary as a part of grief.
I think you need to give people need to give some people fucking slack of being like, you don't. It's the same people that are like, why aren't you always eating healthy, or why aren't you always? It's like this all or nothing mentality, and I think people just need fucking grace during a breakup to do what they want. And if a little distraction is healthy for them, that's fine. I think when it gets destructive and self-destructive and you're hurting yourself or you're hurting other people around you, that's something to look at and to reframe and be like, listen, bitch, sit the fuck down and let's like recalibrate for a second. But like, I think also like every breakup can look different. Like I've had breakups where I went 2 years single. I threw myself into my career in New York because I was fucking traumatized. I was traumatized. So I had to do that. Whereas like the last breakup I went through, like cried for 48 hours straight and then was like,
I'm good.
Great. Here's me in my fucking crop top. So I think listen to yourself and like, don't get too caught up in the messaging of it. Don't get caught up in what we're fucking saying to you. Like,
Truly.
pay attention to what you need and are asking for and want, and like play with that. And like, oh my God, as someone who like hates being a weenie hut junior when she's by herself, like I'm so sensitive, but like I sometimes really don't let myself cry in the way that I need to. Like I'll be wailing and I'll be like, that's so embarrassing. Like stop. Let yourself like wail. Like cry.
Yeah.
Like cry
Cry
it
it
out.
out.
Also, like, one more thing on Craig. Let yourself do that, even if it's not like what was so interesting to me was one of the breakups that I consider a breakup, even though it was not a breakup, was like a situationship. And I remember I could not get over it. And it's because I didn't let myself acknowledge the fact that like
You didn't feel through.
I was upset.
Yeah.
And I let
You didn't feel
myself,
justified in being that upset when it wasn't a defined relationship.
yeah.
And that's not fair.
And I let myself cry as if I had just been dumped by the love of my life.
Yeah.
And it got me fucking
Did the
through
trick.
it. It did the fucking trick. I woke up, I was like, look how clear and pretty my eyes look now. Like,
I love
it's great.
everything you're saying, and especially that healthy distraction. Like going back to the grief part of it too, like especially just considering dead dad, like healthy distraction is such an important part of grief because it's what helps, like laughing and not feeling guilty, like all that shit. Like it's just such an important part of that. So I love that you nailed that. And honestly, T, from someone that's like half her immediate family members have died, sometimes breakups hurt more because that is more open ended than the finality of death.
I just saw someone talking about this on the internet, and it's so fucking true because it's like the hardest, one of the hardest things that I've noticed about breakups, and tell me if you agree with this, is that you have to then choose the fact that you're gonna have to do it again.
Yeah,
Like I
that's what I
remember
mean.
saying
Like
that
the
during my last
strength to
breakup.
have to commit to love again and again is
Yeah.
like that bravery, that strength, that vulnerability, that dedication. Like
Yeah.
that is so not to go understated. So that's why, like, I really don't believe we've been in abusive, toxic relationships and spoke about it publicly on this platform.
Grammar.
I can't do past tense verbs. We know this anyway.
I get mortified
You
after
do.
breakups
Yeah.
because I'm like, A, cannot believe you've seen me naked. B, I'm like, that is so embarrassing that I was wrong. Like I
But
told
you're
people I
not
was gonna marry you. I told people that.
Yeah.
Like I feel wrong, and I get really embarrassed about it during breakups. And you, when this last breakup happened like 3 years ago,
Yeah.
like you were so integral in being like,
We're not doing that. In that same vein, it's important to tell your friends and the people around you how to support you. So if you don't have a friend that does that and you want one, reach out to your best friend and be like, hey, can you remind me that like it's always worth it to be seen and it's vulnerable to be seen? Like, can you text me reminders? That's such a nice thing to ask. Like,
yeah.
I love when people tell me how they want to be supported. It's your right to have needs. It's your responsibility to communicate them. So tell your friends if you'd like help being supported that way.
Or like write little notes for yourself around your apartment
Totally.
and like stick them on the mirror.
Totally.
Like you're cute.
Holding space for both of you though, because that's a lot
Yeah.
of grief in both scenarios.
Hey everyone, popping in to say thank you to all of the amazing people who listen and watch this podcast. We're so grateful for each and every one of you and truly cannot say thank you enough for tuning in every single week.
In order for us to keep bringing you all great conversations and continue building our community and raising the bar, we're asking you for some simple and free support. Subscribe to our channel, follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts, and keep up with us on social at Thoughts May Vary Pod.
And if you're looking to dive even deeper, you can join our exclusive Patreon community and download Co-Create, our digital manifestation journal filled with over 150 prompts to help guide your curiosity and unlock new layers of yourself.
Thanks for being here.
Okay. Tips for not having a clear image of what your creative career looks like and not having a niche.
Play.
Yeah.
Play. Every no you collect is as much data as a yes.
Yeah.
Play, release the pressure to figure it out, make your why. I'm trying to figure out my why, which, I mean, the easiest sentences to gloss over when then actually doing it is so challenging. So let's acknowledge that. But if you can drop the pressure to figure it out, playing and exploring, I find is going to be not the quickest, but the most authentically led way to discover. And it might change. It might change anyway. So like maybe what it is for you right now in 5 years, it's different. And that's both are true.
I feel like remembering that you're the secret sauce. So getting comfortable with like, what are the things you're really good at? What are the things that you enjoy doing? What are the things that light you up that like you have so much energy to do it? But when I hear the word niche talked about in the same width as creativity, I just think about like influencer culture and like TikTok culture of like, find your niche, find your niche, find your niche, find your niche. And it's like putting confines on your creativity. But what's also really interesting with that, because that's something, by the way, that like I used to be really against, is like niching down. Because I was like, oh my God, shut up. Like, stop. And then I started to like play with that idea and be like, why does this make me so uncomfortable? And then I watched Ava DuVernay's masterclass. And she talks about how when she was filming Origin and she was making the movie, like so many different things obviously went wrong. And she was talking about the specific scene in which they were meant to be shooting the scene. It was supposed to look like India, but they
Mhm.
couldn't shoot it in India. And I think
Mhm.
they were like, I don't know where they were, but I think they were somewhere in the South. They brought in cows
Mm.
or a cow.
Mhm.
And they were like, this is what's going to make it look like India. So she said, like, at first, after I let myself be like pissed and panic, she was like, we then strategized and we re-angled the shot and we did this and we that. And we put all of our brains together. And she goes, and that shot of how we got it was so much better than like what we could have ever imagined during what our thought of like, what is going to make this look like India. And she was like, sometimes the best creativity happens around parameters.
I was just gonna say, I find boundaries in art and creativity to be so helpful.
Yeah.
It's like if you were, because we're writers, if you're a writer and it's like write anything you want versus like write about a specific memory of an inner child at you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
having parameters can allow you to be more creative sometimes. So play with different niches to see how it feels. Go boundaryless and see how it feels. Like all of them are opportunities to gain more information about
Right.
your craft for yourself.
Right. I love that's how you started it because it's true. It's everything is data.
Everything's data.
Everything is data.
And when you remove the like pressure or emotional need or the validation or the whatever you're going to get from this by figuring this out, like when you remove all that and put space between you and the thing, then you can observe the data with more, like if that hindsight, big picture, objectivity perspective. And then that's what kind of keeps the magic and keeps the fun.
Yeah.
If you don't let yourself get swept away in it.
Do you know what also helps? I'm thinking about
I'd
like
love
when
to know
I'm
what kind of
writing-
art though,
Yeah.
because this is I feel like that might shift our answers a little bit.
I know that like when I write a story, I just talked about this in my last YouTube video. I always start the piece before I like sit down to actually write it. I'll ask myself, what's the story? And I'll make all these bullet points and I'll write things down. And for me, that's helpful because I create my own parameters. I think that's why like the niche can be helpful is like if you're creating, if you're asking yourself, what do I want the outcome to be and be okay with how it shifts and molds and changes? But like you have that general concept of what message, what are you trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
And then you work backwards.
Mm-hmm.
That's really helpful. Like I usually when I transcribe interviews, the quote that stands out to me the most of all of the quotes is usually the quote that I end on. And I
Cool.
pull that out and I work backwards.
Cool. Love that. I love
Because-
that. And then be open to whichever way you
Yeah.
get there.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be many ways to say the same thing.
Yeah.
So be open to what authentically comes through.
Mhm.
That's very cool.
And also be okay to pivot if you don't have anything to say. Because if we're talking about like monetizing something, I was having this conversation the other day with a friend who's also in podcasting, and she was like, we feel so entitled to people's ears. Like we genuinely believe that like everything we say is like mic drop, bitch.
That's
But,
how
like,
we started this.
It's true.
Yeah.
We feel really entitled to
Everyone thinks their thought is like the most novel, groundbreaking. No one's thought of
Right.
it before.
right.
Because
Including
technically no
us.
one has in your own vessel. So it always
Yeah.
feels that way to us, right? Yeah.
Right. So my point in saying that is like if there's a lot of resistance around what you're trying to say, maybe pivot.
Cool question.
Cool question. Okay. How did you both meet your partners? I mean, my mind's short, I guess. Met on Hinge.
Yeah, but you could tell them like,
So situationship that I was ugly crying about
mm-hmm.
was interesting because that the ugly crying that was happening around it was nothing to do with the person involved
Yeah.
and all about me feeling rejected.
Mm-hmm.
And
It totally was.
when
Yeah.
I let it go and also remembered the lessons in my prior relationship, which was stop molding and morphing into whoever you're with to make them feel comfortable in your space. And I was like, I basically woke up and remembered who the fuck I was.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you. I shit you not. That's when I met Zoe.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I remember.
it was fast.
I remember.
It was
Yeah.
fast and
Yeah.
we fell fast and
Yeah.
we were in love fast. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. And so I saw him on Hinge. I was annoyed with dating apps at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And
You had also just whittled down the roster, like right
Oh,
before.
yeah.
You were like, I'm kind of cutting off the
situationship
roster.
end was kind of the end
Yeah.
of the roster
Yeah.
era.
Yeah.
I whittled down the roster.
You did.
And because I finally admitted to myself what I actually wanted.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to be in a relationship.
Yeah.
And I made a list. We had spoken with one of our fave psychics. And she was like, you need to get really clear about what you want in a man. And she was like, and I only tell people to do this when they're like ready and they're like
Mhm.
not blocked by like ego and whatever the fuck.
Mhm.
And I made a list of all the qualities, superficial and not superficial, how I want what do I want him to make me feel like? What qualities do I want him to have? How do I want to make him feel? Like, what does he look
Who are
like?
you when you're with him?
Who am I when I'm with him? What are the qualities he brings out of me? Like, what are the qualities he has? Everything. I mean, I went so granular. And within like a month of making that list, I saw Zoe on Hinge. I was like hot and was like hot athlete talks about mental health.
I was gonna say, do you remember when I helped you form your
Yeah.
like one of your first messages to him because I knew about the specific type of like therapy modalities he was working with children, and I was like, say this, he'll be so impressed, and
And he was.
Thank you.
And that's why he like asked me on a date. So it was
Yeah.
Meadows.
It was
Oh,
my date.
That's all Meadows doing. And we went out. He asked me out really quickly. And we went out really quickly. And I remember like the whole thing happened so fast. And I remember being like, I normally don't do this with Hinge. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really go out on that many dates with people.
Mhm.
I like normally take a while to like whatever. I was taking a while to respond to him, and he almost cut me off.
I
for
remember
it.
that too.
But and then I remember I saw him in person, and I was so taken aback.
Well,
by
you both say
him.
the same thing about each other because he was on a work call finishing it, and you were sitting, and you
Yeah.
both like saw each other, and were both like,
Like I actually,
my God,
my
wait,
heart
I gotta
skipped a
go.
beat
This
without
is
sounding
intru-
like a
yeah.
fucking loser. Like
Yeah.
I genuinely was like, oh my God, I just like gargled.
I heard it. My
God.
stomach's been growling the whole
Yeah.
time, so it's
So
fine.
anyway, cool, that's how I feel. My heart like genuinely skipped a beat when I saw him, and I remember having this really overwhelming feeling of like, I know you, and like you'll play a big role in my life.
Mhm.
And then after date number 3, it was like
Off to the races.
off to the fucking races, and we've
Yeah.
been together ever since. That was like almost 2 years ago.
I moved from Oakland back to San Diego. I never wanted to be in San Diego again. I left for college, went to Santa Barbara, San Francisco, Oakland, and was like, shit, well, here we go. I'm back again. It's a whole other story. And got like a job 2 weeks before, like came 2 weeks before, set up my little apartment, walked in day one, and there was only like 4 of us in this one office. And 2 of the people were there, and they were kind of quieter at first. We became friends later, but they were kind of quieter at first. And I was like, man, like, they're kind of quiet. Like, I need friends. Like, I
Who
don't
can I
want to be
yell
here. You know
with?
what I mean? And there was one person that was late. And I saw his name tag or whatever. And I was just sitting there waiting. And he walks in like this cool outfit. And he's got his hair up and he's got the sunglasses on and whatever. And he just walks straight past me. And one of our coworkers, Billiam, was like, Erin, this is the new girl Meadow. And he literally comes up, sunglasses still on, 20 minutes late, not a care in the world. Comes up to me, like does a little turn, which I'm not going to get up and model for you, does a little thing and was like, hi, I'm Erin. And I was just like, I literally was like this. I was like, oh my God, it's me in male form. Like, fuck. Like
You
the
guys are
second I
it's
saw
actually
him,
crazy. Yeah.
we're the same. We're both
Yeah.
golden retrievers. You know, we made that joke.
Yeah.
I was like, it's literally me in male form. So I thought we were just like new best friends. He took me sneaker shopping, like the fucking day 2 of my lunch work, whatever. We were hanging out a lot. There was a group of us hanging out a lot for that first like 3 weeks. And then we were supposed to go to a concert, Sid the Kid from the internet. And my friend Kelly was going to go with us. And I said, you can't go. I'm selling your ticket because I think something's there and I got to figure it out. And I remember before that being with Kieran, who wrote the new music of our show.
I know.
Shout out Kieran Miles. He picked me up from work to go to a little lunch date, and we were sitting there just talking about whatever. And he's like sitting eating a burger. And I remember being like, I feel like there's something between me and Erin. And just the look, he went, what? Like, just didn't see it coming. And I had no reason to believe it.
Yeah.
I had no reason to believe it. There was one time we crossed the street downtown and he put his hand behind the small of my back, but didn't touch it and just like escorted me across the street.
Yeah.
I mean,
You said a
Southern
Southern
manners.
man.
Southern manners. And I was just like, there's something here and I need to figure out. Sold her ticket, went to the concert. We did drugs. And he didn't know that I used to party. So he's like rolling and I'm completely sober and his entire body weight is like on my body. And 4 songs deep, he goes, whoa, I just opened my eyes. Like he's rolling. Sid is singing Girl, which is like a love ballad 4 feet from me. And I'm like in love with her. And Erin turns and whispers in my ear, ever since you walked through those doors, it feels like I can breathe again. And we went home and talked about our dead parents all night long.
I love how I look shocked that I've heard this story 75 times.
By that night, we're like, oh, we're together.
Yep.
8 days later, said I love you.
Yep.
And have never been apart. And now we're
Yep.
married.
I can't believe you guys were married.
6.5 years.
I can't believe he said he could breathe again.
The first thing he ever said to me to like establish that we had feelings for each other, ever since you walked through those doors, I feel like I can breathe again.
then
like
did you make out
whispered
all
it in my
night?
ear as she's singing to me. And I was like, oh my, I was like, who am I in love with? I was like, what is happening?
You're like, you?
Not only did
You?
we make out all night, we literally unpacked that like I have a dead dad and he has a dead mom and like how we found love. Like it just, I mean, we're gross, you know.
I know.
We're both so simpy. And we are both so in love with each other that it's gross in the best way.
Taurus men are
Person loves
simps.
it. So good.
Wow.
So juicy.
I love your love story.
Thank you. I
That's
love
really
yours.
cute.
I also think it's fun that neither of us abided to timelines. Like I know you did a little bit of the texting thing. Aaron and I, because we were friends, like there was no like the way I used to approach dating, I never approached him with that.
Well, what's funny is that the way that I had approached dating, that I attempted to approach with him, made him want
Be
to
like,
cut me off.
I'm not fucking
And
with this.
basically, like I had just gone through that situationship. I had gone through roster era Gabby, and I was like, "Fuck this guy. He can wait 24 hours for me to answer him." And he was like, "Who the fuck does this bitch think she is? Like, no one is that busy. You can't hit me back within 24 hours." So he's like bitching to his sister.
Yeah.
I'm bitching to Maddie.
Yeah.
And Maddie was like, "Gabby, stop it.
Yeah.
Like, you're not gonna win the cool award because you like
Right, 'cause
fucking
you took
didn't-
longer to
because you took long-
respond.
Like,
Yeah.
who cares? Are you in the fucking 5th grade? Like, text him back. Like, if
Right.
you want to see him, text him back."
Right.
And I was like, fine, whatever.
And if he's put off by that, then that's also like that's not who you want to be.
Right.
With.
And so I decided to text him back, and then I hear from him later that like he had been bitching to his sister, being like, "What is this girl doing?" Like, and his sister said that like he told me that she stalked me, and she was like, "This is the coolest person you've ever been associated with. If you don't hit her back, we're gonna have an issue." And so we both had people on either end being like, "Stop being the worst." And then I think I really quickly was just so over the like playing game thing by that point that I was just like, "This is me."
Yeah.
And he was like, "And this is me." And then we were just like in love.
There we go.
And so gross.
There we go.
And had so
Here
much
we are.
fun.
2
Here
peas
we
in a
are.
pod. 4 peas in a pod.
What
I still
was-
am begging for them to come on the pod. I mean, Zoe,
Same.
Zoe, it'll be the time of his life. Aaron
He's
will
a
be
Leo
like,
rising and is born to be in front of a camera and a microphone. So just give him a mic and the man will run.
Aaron is so nervous to air his opinions on the internet. That's all he talks about. He's like, I don't know if my perspectives will be received. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Everyone loves you.
Can I tell you guys that I've never seen this man? Aaron is the most charismatic guy you'll ever meet. The way
And
he
then a camera,
clammed
and he's
up
like,
when he did our intro with not even a camera, like the
Xena, that outro that he did, it's like 17 different
Yeah.
takes that I stitched together. Like it's the
He
most
was really
editing work
nervous.
I've ever done. He cannot do camera. But you know
Stop
what?
fucking with your mic.
Sorry. I'm turning into you.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll bring him on Patreon, like safe space first, and then like build up his confidence on the camera.
Like 17 takes later.
No, truly.
It was crazy. Okay. Somebody asked, would love support on how to grieve a friend's suicide, living with regret about not supporting him enough and being out of touch for years, etc. That's hard. I'm really sorry.
New folks or folks that don't know, my brother died by suicide. I've had friends and friends of friends die by suicide. I'm so sorry. It's really, really hard. And it's like it's a really nuanced grief experience. And I wish I had something better to say besides the fact that like, at least for me, like guilt has always been a part of it.
Yeah.
And not that you have to feel that or you should, but just it is such a natural thing that comes up when you feel so sad that someone took their life in a way that like you weren't privy to all the access to the information or you did. It's
Yeah.
just like it's such a I don't know, it's such a unique human experience that like I've never gone through it without some feelings of guilt. I think it's a natural part of that. And I think honoring that while again like creating that space between you and it so you can like see that this is a natural part of it because it's such a unique human experience, but not let it consume you and allow that to be felt without having to like solve that problem or reconcile with it. I don't know. I just
Yeah.
like it's always been a part of it for me. So I wouldn't say to avoid it, but I would say maybe, I mean, talking to a therapist about it is like what helped me so
Yeah.
much. After I lost my brother and then my dad back to back, that's when I started therapy at age 17, back to back. It was like 3 years apart, 2.5 years
That's
apart.
a lot.
It's back to, I mean, when you're fucking 14 and
Yeah.
17 or whatever it was, 15 and 17, it just really was a natural part of it for me. And so I had to just talk it out and like let myself feel it and explore what that meant for me, explore where it like came up in other areas of my life. So I wouldn't avoid it. I wouldn't let yourself give over to it. But I think any part of grief, again, any part of grief that you can just feel and let yourself feel it, then it loosens its hold on you in a way that it gives you perspective on it in a kinder way.
Mm,
And maybe that means you check in with other friends.
yeah.
How is your mental health? Maybe you want to ask more about other friends' mental health in a way you haven't in the past. Maybe it allows you to move forward in a way that changes what your relationships look like. And that's a beautiful gift that this gave you. And I know that's like
Mhm.
a really weird way to phrase that.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying. Different than when someone dies by suicide because of the shock that you can feel, the guilt that all of that comes with that I've never personally experienced. I know that with death in general and grief in general, I remember when we talked about it on Anne Louise's episode, like when my
Mhm.
grandma passed away, I remember having all these thoughts like a few months later that were so guilt-ridden because I was so happy about the time that I got with my cousins. And, like, having all these thoughts, like, I felt bad about trying to find the silver linings, and I was
Right.
so young, I was, like,
Right.
in the 5th grade,
Yeah.
and I remember even at that age just feeling so guilty for, like, being happy
Yeah.
and, like, being like, "Oh, if she hadn't passed, then, like, I wouldn't have XYZ moment with my cousins wouldn't have happened."
Yeah.
It's like, how do you move through not feeling bad? Remember, like, I think always think about the story that you tell, like, the first time that you, like, were, like, happy and then you remembered, like, "How
With my
dare I."
dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote about this. It's on my Instagram if anyone wants to read it in prose. It's really awkward plug. Um, just the first it was like so when someone that dies that really matters to you, it's like you think about them every single day. And then the first day you go all day long and all of a sudden it hits you, whoa, I haven't thought about my dad once.
Yeah.
Like the guilt that was overcome with that. And like I had such a beautiful day. How could the beauty of it and the joy of it not remind me of like the most important person to me that I lost? And then it's so funny because the way I explain it is just how it happened. Like I just got really present in that moment, and the song that was playing was a song that like he used to always play. And to me, it was like because that's what you're supposed to keep living for the people on the other side. Like you're supposed to
Yeah.
come with stories. You're supposed to keep living and keep moving on and like see things through in a different way that you want to experience before you go too. So that when you come to them, you bring something new to the fucking collective experience because we're all interconnected. So it's just like knowing it's a part of it and then releasing that to know you're still here now and how can
Yeah.
you make the most of it or how can you like honor that love or friendship or respect or relationship in the moment now.
Mm,
And that's always done with more love, not with more guilt.
yeah.
It's hard though. I really, really recommend talking to the community around you and like having some sort of like professional or like maybe an
A
online
peer
free
support
support
group,
group.
yeah.
I host ones with Mayfair that are completely free. I know there's a ton of free online group therapy. Dr. Sam Zan, who's come on,
Mhm.
does free online virtual therapy. So like whatever way you can find access to care, I think that's a scenario in which it's so monumentally helpful to work through the nooks and crannies of such like a nuanced human experience. Yeah. I'm so sorry though. It's like
I am
it's
so
a
sorry.
lot to hold. It's a lot to hold.
Yeah.
And all the grief tips we spoke earlier still apply.
Thanks for answering that the way that you did. Okay. I got a job! Exclamation point, exclamation point. Congrats. They said entry-level marketing girly advice,
Ooh, okay.
please.
I feel like this is up your alley.
I mean, shift from what we were just talking about. Congratulations. That's amazing.
Yay!
So
Good for
excited for
you.
you. My advice for people always in entry level is be a sponge. Absorb as much as you can because you're currently at the level with the lowest stakes of your career. So, and I'm not saying do a shitty job. In fact,
No, no,
do
no.
an amazing job. But like you have the bandwidth
Mhm.
to learn and be a sponge and explore. And don't do it in a way that feels like shady and weird and like behind your boss's back and like trying to get to like C-suite people in a weird way. But I just mean in the way of like take in the new corporate environment that you're in or take in whatever environment that you're in. Learn how to move in that space. Learn to find your voice in a way that, especially as entry level, like there's a really fine line between asserting yourself and like what you're there to do, but also understanding that like you are at the bottom of the totem pole and there are people who understand and know more than you. And there are people that are going to be telling you what to do. So there's a very like nice little delicate dance that you need to do there. That I think is very like, we're just like, you're being respectful.
Mhm.
But yeah, my advice always with entry level is like, be a sponge,
Mhm.
learn as much as you can, be as adaptable as you can.
Mhm.
And like we said a million times this episode, everything is data. If you
Mhm.
hate it, great. That's just as good as knowledge as if you loved it.
Mhm.
But like exciting,
Totally.
super
I
exciting.
agree with
time.
everything you said. My advice is so different
Go
because yours is
lean in.
important first. Yours is like actually helpful for how to move through.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is kind of specific and probably projecting, but I still think
ahead.
it applies. Not your circus, not your monkeys. Work is going to be way less personal than it feels.
Yeah.
I've seen in corporate environments and I've watched, I mean, my corporate was like nationwide nonprofits, right? So
Mhm.
like large scale nonprofits, still very corporate-y. The way you watch like other people interact with each other,
No,
the
it's high
way
school.
how personal it's high school.
It's
And
high
like
school.
the way your boss calls you on that one day when you're off and like it'll feel so personal and so activating. And it is so not about you and it so does not matter. And so like anything you can do to still be involved in your community and like have your friends and have safe outlets and like take care of yourself, like that little bit of space between you. Cause sometimes those environments are wilding and like
Yeah.
social dynamics, like be a sponge, as Gabby's saying, with the perspective of like, whoa, these social dynamics are crazy. Like, look at how
Yeah.
people are treating each other. Or look at how cool this person is respected. Like, why is it? How do they move? Like,
yes.
keeping all those things in
Yes.
mind, like it's not your circus, it's not your monkeys, it's not your company. Like it's not going to be that personal. And like removing that aspect of it gives you objectivity to do a better job, frankly.
I also think that there's two really huge lessons that you can learn when you're entry level. One, be receptive to feedback. So like Meadow said, sometimes it's not personal and like I mean, it's usually not personal.
And I
but
mean
like,
that in terms of like you making everything your problem and your
yes,
thing. And
yes.
your,
Or like
yeah.
if your boss calls you in and he's like, hey, can you
Right.
improve the way that you do X, Y, Z? They're not telling you you're a stupid bitch.
Exactly.
Like they're just saying like,
they need
hey,
information.
Yeah.
They need to, yeah.
And a second thing that I think is really important and valuable to learn is when you don't have anyone to manage, you can really watch the way that other people lead and the types of bosses that they are.
I love that.
And you can really learn about the type of boss that you want to be and the way that you want to lead. And you're like taking all this information, being like, hated how that made me feel. Not going to do that when I'm a manager. Like, ooh, love how they did that. I want to lead that way. Like I have a notes app.
I was just going to say,
I have
make a note about it.
I have a note on my phone of like different leadership styles that I've experienced and not even personally. Like in Ava's masterclass, like she said so many things that I was like, when I have a team, like I want to lead in that way. I want to keep that top of mind with how I lead. With the way that Amy was as a boss, like she was fantastic and made sure to nurture what I wanted and my skills and whatever. So I think you have a really fun opportunity to like, just like take advantage of that stuff.
Yeah.
Cause like, again, low stakes.
Love that.
And congrats.
Congrats. We're proud of you.
Love it. That feels like a good place to end for today.
All right.
I feel like we just dove in.
We do, and we have a lot more questions to answer.
We do have a lot more
we'll
questions.
Talk to you
guys
soon.
always come through. So thank you very much for listening and for writing in. You can write in
See you here
on
soon.
Instagram, Patreon.
Good call out.
DMs are tough.
We
So
have a
send
place
us-
on our website, but no one uses it, so it's fine. You don't have to.
Yeah.
We get it.
Look out for that question box on our story.
Yeah.
Patreon is a good place.
Patreon's a great place.
But live, laugh, love anyway.
TTYL.
All right. Ciao. Bye.
How's it going, y'all? It's Aaron. Don't let your Monday suck. Don't have those Sunday scaries. I'm tired of everybody waking up in the week saying, shit, it's Monday. You know what goes down? TMV releases every week on Mondays. Make sure you rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching YouTube, yes, TMV has a YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and ring that noti bell and never miss a thing. And also, join the TMV Familia by joining the Thoughts May Vary Patreon and by following @Thoughts May Vary Pod on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you for listening.
Great.
There you go.
Thanks, AB.
Got y'all.